Today on the show, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jake Woodard. Jake is an inspirational mentor, coach, speaker, and author. He guides people to gain clarity, confidence, and awaken their inner badass. Now, I'm going to say it again because it's inner badass here in the United States. His own struggle.
Am I allowed to swear on the show, by the way?
You are allowed to swear on this show. Right. That is my guess, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. I'll re-record that just so we can
start that over if you want.
You are allowed to swear. All right.
All right, good. I know some people, some do, some don't. I don't know.
Yeah, we can bleep it out. Right. Laura, if you heard that, Laura's my editor, by the way, so hence why I'm counting her in. All right, we'll do it again from the top. 3, 2, 1. Today on the show, I had the pleasure of speaking with Jake Woodard. Jake is a transformational mentor, speaker, and author. He guides people to gain clarity, confidence, and awaken their inner badass. Now, I will say it in my American tone, inner badass. His own struggles and challenges have made him passionate about helping others in their own journey and about helping them unlock their fulfill their own potential. I'm really excited to have him on the show, but enough out of me. Let's get him out here. G'day, Jake. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today, mate?
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me here, brother.
Hey, bud. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We met a couple of months back at the Rod Cleef event in Los Angeles, which was here, which was a really incredible event. And I got to know you a little bit. And since then, I've been following you online, and we're going to get into what you do in a little bit. But before we do, can you tell us how you made your first ever dollar as a kid for pocket change?
So honestly, I'm thinking about it in my mind. I grew up in a small farm town in upstate New York, about, on like 50 acres of land, running through the woods, grew up on farms and ponds and everything. Right. So the first dollar I ever made, I was probably about 9 years old, and I threw hay. I don't know if you've ever thrown hay before, your listeners have ever thrown hay, but it's not something for the weak individual, because it really kicked my ass. And, I learned a lot, because I actually started to really enjoy it, because I learned a lot about myself, and I kind of grew more into that, mindset of that grit, toughness and work. And, a lot of people that meet me now, they're like, oh, wow, you're from a small town in upstate New York and grew up on farms and everything. It's kind of funny. And, the other thing that was right side by side with that is I was working construction with my father, who was, very, very intense and very hard to work with. And, I was pounding nails with him at 9 or 10 years old. So about the same time I was throwing hay. So I got a lot of physicality early on in life.
That's awesome. That's incredible. I actually grew up riding horses. So the daily grind of getting up early and, throwing hay, as they say. I didn't throw hay, but I definitely was up mucking out stables. I spent a few summers constructing pools, and it's that inner challenge and the struggle as a kid to get through hard days' work and to learn what a hard day's work is to earn a dollar. It's really important, I think, to set up the story for anyone's entrepreneurial life, because you have, as you said, that grit, that that sort of grit your teeth to get up and dust your knees off and say, yeah, this is bloody hard, but I'm going to earn that that dollar at the end of the day that I worked so hard for, and then I can put it to good use. So mate, awesome stuff. So tell me, explain the story from going from a 9-year-old hammering nails and throwing hay to what you do now and how you got there.
Man, so when I was about 6 years old, I would say, I just had so much energy, right? And I think a lot of children have energy, but I just couldn't sit still. And my mother was constantly threatening to send me off to military school for boys. And she's like, Jake, if you do not start behaving, you are going to this military school. I promise you, you're going to go. So I'm like, well, shit, I don't know what to do with all this energy that I have, right? So I discovered something called Twinkies. And I became severely addicted to sugar, so much to the point that my mother had to hide the snacks in the snack cabinet, because I would just rip through all the snacks and just eat them all. And I was very overweight as a child and a lot of my teenage years. In fact, to the point I grew up to about 240 pounds, and I'm about 170 now. So, I was bullied and picked on as a young kid for, being that fat kid. I was the type that had to shop in the quote unquote husky section in the department. Right. But, that was kind of the surface level to my pain, Reed. The real awakening moment for me, the first awakening moment, there was many of them, was my older sister, Jocelyn, who was my best friend, right? She was 4 years older than me. She was super smart. She was bold, and she just really didn't care what other people thought. And she just had so much going for her in her life. She was popular. You know, she was really kind of just the coolest thing I thought ever. And I would just constantly break into her bedroom looking to hang out with her and her friends. And I can remember the day I was 13 years old, and I was breaking into the bathroom to pour ice cold water on her because she was in the shower, and it was just a stupid prank, you know, some dumbass kid would do, right? And so I'm trying to get in the door. I'm fidgeting with the door, and I couldn't get it, so I just kicked open the door. And I bust open the door, and she's laying there on the ground. And I'm thinking to myself, why is she on the ground? And I ran over to her to see what happened because she was unconscious at this point, and she had a needle in her arm.
Wow.
And at that point, she had legally overdosed on heroin. So, and it still gives me chills to like even think about this image to this day in my mind. And I started screaming and crying. I was like yelling for my mom, like, what happened? What happened? I'm screaming. I'm shaking her. Like, I'm trying to wake her up. And we had gotten her to the hospital, like revitalized her, whatever. And about a year later, I was living with my mother and my younger sister, Jasmine, who's also 3 or 4 years younger than me. And Jocelyn was living in the basement, and she had been doing heroin for the year. It was just a crazy mess, monster in the basement type, you know, deal. And I can remember we were fighting in the kitchen, and it wasn't like this brother sister loving, like, oh, I hate you fight. Like, no, this was a war. And Jocelyn took out a 12-inch butcher's knife, and she said, I'm going to fucking stab you with this. And I didn't know what to do. So I ran in my bedroom and locked the door, slammed the door. And I said to myself, I said, well, what do you do now? And I started punching the ground. I was so upset. I was crying. I was wailing. And I was so angry. I had all this energy inside of me. It just like wanted to come out. And it was like these demons were inside of me. And I looked up in the corner of my room where I kept a single gauge 20 gauge shotgun or single barrel 20 gauge shotgun that I had gotten for Christmas. And I thought about ending it all now. And I thought to myself, I said, well, I could just take this gun and just, you know, take my life right now. And in that moment, what I thought I found was actually like hate and anger and fear and everything else. I actually started to find love, because I found love for myself. I found love for my younger sister, who was also hiding in her bedroom across the hallway. I started to love my family, you know, and fast forward 7 years of overcoming alcoholism to, you know, a toxic relationship with my father that was also very physically and emotionally abusive. He tried killing me multiple times. And, you know, overcoming obesity to losing over 70 pounds, I got into personal development. And and this one thing really changed my life was this point when I got to the point of I can continue to be a victim of my life, or I can start to take responsibility for it. So I started taking responsibility for it. And I went on to do all these healing modalities and read 500-600 books, worked with all these great mentors, started going to all these seminars, started watching YouTube videos and audiobooks and podcasts. And I honestly just became obsessed with developing myself. So when I got to the point of, okay, I'm pretty healed now. Like I don't really, you know, need much more to continue healing. I thought to myself, I said, all right, well, now what do you do? And, you know, that point I went on to become an author. I started doing life coaching, and I just really wanted to serve people at the highest capacity, help them heal, you know, those wounds that they have. And that's kind of my story, man, in a brief introduction.
Well, that's an incredible introduction. I think, you know, just it's also very deep and dark. It has some pretty dark corners, you know, heroin overdose and, you know, family violence and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty intense. So good on you, I guess, for getting out of it and having the wherewithal to not turn to an easy out and, you know, ending it all there when you had, you know, at your lowest point, because I'm sure a lot of people can understand or have been to low points in their lives as entrepreneurs, as, you know, dealing with family members, as growing up in this society. You know, we all struggle. We all have our own shit, right? And it's about how we deal with it. And I think the biggest thing I just took away from that introduction is not being a victim. So many people have excuses. You know, it's these barriers of excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse before they're actually going to get off their ass and do something and say, hey, it's my I can control the outcome here. I don't have to rely on Joe or Bob or my boss or my mom or my sister or my grandfather or whoever. And it's taking that responsibility and owning it, and then making a change for the better. So it sounds like you've done an incredible amount of change. And man, a pretty sober start to this interview. You know, it's I'm pretty usually energetic, but you've got me down. But no, in a good way. But in a good way, I want to. It's kudos.
Well, I've learned that vulnerability connects with people, man. And once I learned that, like when I expose my wounds, and other people can say, okay, now I feel safe to move forward with this. And it's the key to connection, man. So like, I know, like, especially as men, we're taught, oh, you got to be tough. You can't, show your wounds. That is so far wrong, man. Like when I learned that the key to connection is vulnerability and being transparent and being real and being raw, I started having these amazing relationships with people in my life.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think being that vulnerable shows people that you're going to let the curtains down a little bit and not have to have all those, as I said, those barriers up, those blocks up. So pretty incredible stuff, mate. This show is obviously about investing here in the United States, but a lot of investing and making decisions, becoming an entrepreneur and successfully running your own business. I've interviewed a lot of people in this show, but we don't talk a lot about that mindset. And that's why I've got you on the show today, to talk about that mindset, that shift of that control, that it essentially at the end of the day, the responsibility lands at your feet, at our feet, and to take control of our life. And the way in which we approach that, some people have a lot of, what's the word? I guess they're scared. They're scared to approach that control in a way which they can harness that inner energy. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you help people approach it differently, so they're not so scared, they're not got those walls up and those barriers, in order to be successful and go on to be the best person they can be?
Right. Yeah. And my response to that is there is no cookie cutter way, because everybody has a different story. Everybody has different, risk tolerances and what they can handle, what they're going to do. And honestly, what I've learned is I think everybody has the capability of being an entrepreneur. Like a little more background on me too. I got the dream job, right? I was making upwards of 6 figures, dream job, easy work, great benefits, everything, but my spirit wasn't fulfilled there. So a few years back, I put in my resignation letter and I left the company and became a full-time entrepreneur. And we could talk more about that later, but you're talking more about the mindset and getting real with yourself, getting real and putting that mirror to your face and saying, okay, this is where I lack. But this is why mentors are so powerful, because they can put that mirror to your face for you and they can hold you accountable. Right. And I know you have mentors, just like I have mentors. I'm a mentor. I believe you do mentoring as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So and we see the value in it. So having that mirror to your face and getting real with yourself and actually being, kind of forced to deal with your own stuff, as I like to call it, I mean, sometimes we can do that to ourselves, but then oftentimes it's hard to see our own blind spots. So getting real with yourself first and foremost. And then the next step is actually dealing with your fears, because it's always fear. Everything ties down to either fear or love in every human emotion, right? So we have to identify the blocks, whether it's for example, maybe it's the fear of going broke. Maybe it's the fear of being rejected. Maybe it's the fear of failing. Maybe it's the fear of being lonely. That's a big one for a lot of people. The fear of not being enough. Whatever those fears are, you have to identify them, and you actually have to start challenging those limiting beliefs to live a better life. And all you're really doing is rewiring your mind, because you've been programmed to be fearful. And if you look at a child, you have kids, right?
No. I'm 32, man. I don't have kids just yet.
They'll be coming. Well, for your listeners that have kids, you look at a child and they're so innocent and they don't have a bunch of fear. In fact, the only 2 fears that we are born with is the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling, right? So as we grow older and become quote unquote adults, I'm doing air quotes for that one, we get programmed to be fearful. We get bombarded with all these bills, and we got society telling us exactly how to be, and our guidance counselors telling us to go to this prestigious school, and we got to have this job, and we got to make this amount of money. And if we don't have it, we're going to be a massive failure.
Right.
It's all programming, man.
Right. No, it's so incredible. I was listening to a podcast just recently about, and there's a book by a British author, and I'm Just Google it. It's something to do. It's related to harnessing your inner child. When you're a child as an entrepreneur, you don't ask the questions of what's going to happen. You just do it, right? You just go out, you jump off a ledge because you just do it because it sounds fun. You don't have any limiting beliefs or limiting issues that are going to hold you back from achieving what you're going to set out to do. And harnessing that inner child as an entrepreneur to get things started, to get the ball rolling, to get off the fence is really important, because you're right. We think we're going to have to go to this prestigious school. We think we can't quit our job to go pursue an entrepreneurial life because who's going to pay the bills? And what about my 401k and all that sort of stuff? We have these things yelling at us, and we're constantly looking at other people, but you're right. It's programmed into us. And if we can only harness that inner child, and this one particular book, it's by a British author, I can't remember the name. Please go Google it. It's an incredible book about that and what they say about harnessing that inner child to be a successful entrepreneur. So,
right. Giving that inner child attention, in psychology, there's the inner child, and a lot of people don't deal with that inner child. So the average person walking around in our society has the development of about a 13-year-old because they don't really develop much past that. Right. And,
boys more so than girls, right?
I mean, I think it can go both ways. I mean, obviously, men have their strengths and weaknesses, and so do women. So I think it's, but they also, when they come into harmony, which is kind of off topic, they can really come into alignment, and,
right.
The energy is there to really come into a beautiful, harmony.
Right. I know you mentioned a bunch of limiting factors, but, if we go back through them again, you talk about rejection. A lot of people are fearful of rejection and fearful of taking that next step in their investing career, in their life, taking control of their life by design. I know personally, when I was grappling with leaving my engineering job to go and pursue this investing in full time. I'm an engineer. I've got this very black and white brain where it's like, I need to earn X amount of money in these investments before I'm going to go and do this. And if I don't hit this, I'm not going to be able to do this. And it was very one or the other. And someone said to me one time, it was very powerful. It's like, the lights on the road are never always going to be green at once. It's just never going to happen. So you have to, at some stage, take a leap of faith. And I'm not saying for everyone listening out here, go quit your day job, but I definitely had those inner demons about rejection and limitations. So how do you coach your students, your followers around that? Because it's easy enough for me to say it. I moved to the United States 7 years ago, had not a brass or a zoo to my name, and now I'm investing in multi-million-dollar deals. So it's easy enough for me to say, but how do you teach someone about it? Because there's a difference between just doing it and teaching it.
Yeah, like I said, and everybody's different. So every listener that you have is going to be a little bit different. But I mean, there are some principles kind of behind this. And basically, the thousands of people that I've worked with, I'd be an idiot to have not seen patterns by now, right? So the really thing is getting clear, because when people don't have clarity, it's hard to go forward, right? So the fears of rejection, that's a pretty common one. I would say identifying that you first have the fear, because if you're not even conscious of it, you can't even challenge it, right? It's like if you had a stick stuck into your ribs and you didn't know it was there, it's going to keep hurting you, right? And that's kind of like these fears too, honestly, Reed. So once we identify that fear, we have to begin to chip away at it, right? And as you chip away at that fear, it weakens the fear. And I give the analogy of, if you look at like a brick wall, right? And you walk up to that brick wall and you pull a brick out and you pull another brick out and you pull another brick out. You weaken the structure of that wall. So your wall of fear, we will call it, which is mainly heavily induced by the ego mind. The wall of fear, you begin to take those bricks out and it starts to crumble that wall. And eventually, and you do this, by the way, this is done. Here's my theory, my philosophy, if you will. Pain is the catalyst for change. It will inspire someone to change. Being uncomfortable will force you to grow. So pain is the catalyst for change. Being uncomfortable will force you to grow. If you stay in an area of comfort, you don't ever grow. Like, you don't stretch as a person. You don't expand your level of consciousness, because when you get in a painful situation and maybe you say like your girl broke your heart, right, you're going to find answers to heal yourself. I promise you, you'll start reading books. You'll do whatever it can. Or what most people do in the unfortunate way is they go back into another relationship and repeat the same thing over and over. right? And we all see it. I've done it myself. I've been guilty multiple times of doing this because I thought I was going to heal by jumping to another relationship. But it's like we just jumped into the same relationship again because we didn't heal ourselves, right? So yeah, I mean, honestly, you have to do things that are going to force you to be uncomfortable. Like if you're an introverted person and you don't like networking, do it. You know, like what this is a little extreme of an example, but on one of my birthdays a few years ago, I wanted to go skydiving, right? And I called up my buddies. I'm thinking like, yeah, they're gonna be all jacked up about it. Like, yeah, they're gonna love going skydiving. I get them on the phone, and they're like, no, what? We're gonna jump out of a plane? And so I convinced them to do it, man. And like stepping out of that plane, like within that 30-second free fall at like 120 miles an hour, you have every single fear, thought, love, whatever go through your mind in like a flash. And then, dude, you go through that and like you just start to float and you drift. And in life, it's kind of the same way. At first, when you take that initial step out of the plane and you go through that first, really rough phase of starting up and building momentum, then you hit that point of kind of free floating. And then you kind of just you just glide into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a whole theory too of like when a rocket ship takes off from the earth, it faces most of the resistance. It burns most of its fuel before it even gets out of that, that ozone layer. I'm not like a scientist or whatever layer it breaks through, and then you start to coast. You begin to build momentum, right? So as you do things that make you uncomfortable, little recap here, as you do more things that make you uncomfortable, and I'm not saying like to the point of go run out in front of cars because, that's not something intelligent, right? But doing things that you should be doing, feeling the fear and going towards it, right? And I believe it was Tim Ferriss that quoted this, that he said, what we fear doing the most, we most should do, right? Or something like that, so what we most should usually do. And yeah, man, it's just the fear that holds people back.
It's that adage as well from Tony Robbins, which I love. And it is change it. What is it? Change your life, change your story, or change your story, change your life. So if you change your story because you've gone out and done something incredible or whatever it might be, you're going to change your life. And so having that fear of, when I talk to people about like, you moved from half across the world, you quit your job in Australia, you just moved here because you wanted to. It's like, yeah, I wanted to. Australians have got this weird DNA where we want to just travel the world and experience everything. It's like, screw it, fuck it.
Hey, I'm on board with that, man. I did the same thing. I recently moved 3,000 miles away from my home.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, it's about empowering yourself to take. Now, I was scared as hell when I first got on that plane. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Leaving.
How did you deal with it?
I just knew there was something about me that I just knew that I needed to take that next step, because I'm an entrepreneur through and through, because I have that inner feeling of you stay put, you're going to be dead. Right, you need to go and keep challenging yourself. You need to go keep pushing yourself. Like you, as you're saying, was a kid, you had a lot of energy. You want to keep going pushing. It's how you harness that energy. Now I was a little bit different. I have a lot of energy, but I wasn't crazy or anything like that. I didn't love Tweakies, but I knew that I wanted.
If you've been into one,
yeah, they didn't probably come to Australia. My parents wouldn't allow me to have them.
Oh, you're lucky, man.
but the fact is,
it's like crack.
But the fact is, it's like, you have to challenge yourself. And you just what you said, if you don't challenge yourself and you don't change your story, you're not going to be able to change your life. And I think, being comfortable with the uncomfortable is so important, right? And that's when you become so much more wanting. As soon as you start asking that one question, I remember I asked myself, like, and I talked to my wife about this, and she's like, before I met you, she said to me, I never had the thought in my mind that I could be my own boss one day. And since I've met you, I now am achieving that. And it's just like those little things that over time, as you just said, those little steps, all of a sudden you start asking bigger and bigger and bigger questions, and it's just going and going and going. So it's an absolutely incredible journey, but you're the guest. I want to get more out of you, but
no, you got tons of wisdom too, man. And I will turn around and ask you questions, because I love to learn. And that's, I want to, before I go back to, I want to expand on the story part.
Sure.
But be a student of life and always have the beginner's mind. In Zen Buddhism, they have the theory of the beginner's mind, and they talk about leaving your mind empty, like an empty rice bowl, right? Because if it's empty, if the mind is empty, it can absorb new information, right?
Mm-hmm.
But our ego comes into play and it says, oh, well, you know everything, so you can't learn anything new, right? And then we're not able to process new information and grab new wisdom. But, you know, people like you have amazing experiences, and learning through other people is a great way. That's why I love books, and, you know, learning through other people is an amazing way. But I want to go back and expand on the story, because this is probably the most powerful thing that can shift someone's mindset. Is this. If you're at a point in your life and you're telling yourself a story, you have to first become aware and conscious of the story. For example, if you're telling yourself that, well, this is just too hard, I can't figure it out, you put that vibration in your mind, right? And that vibration energetically is going to expand, okay? So doing that limiting story in your mind, you create your physical reality based off the story that you're telling yourself. So when we learn to actually identify the story and we stop telling ourselves limiting stories like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or this is too hard, I can't figure it out. When you choose and when you put the words I am in front of your life, and I am the creator of my life, I will figure this out, I'm going to do this, and you give yourself your power back. So for your listeners, you have to identify your stories and your limiting beliefs of where you are not, right? And that's the great thing about a mentor, is they help you to discover where you are not so you can get to where you want to be, right?
Right.
So it's really the story, man, and rewiring and reframing that story, a story that's going to nourish your soul and get you to what you want to do in life and start doing it.
No, 100%. And I talk a little bit on this show. There's a couple of people I follow, and a key person of influence is one of them, Dan Priestley, and Carl, I forget his last name, but he's really, really influential. I'm really good today on a Friday afternoon. You can tell I'm remembering everyone. But they talk a lot about standing on a mountain of value. Like, everyone is standing on a mountain of value. And it's a little bit of a different context. It's talking about how you grow your business and how you become a thought leader and all that sort of stuff. But the same adage can apply when you're talking about the I'm not good enough, I'm not this. Like, remember that everyone's standing on a mountain of value, and everyone has a great story that someone will want to hear one day, and that you can do it. Like, you are good enough to go out and take the world by the balls and make a go of it, because that's exactly right. We get too caught up with the chatter in our head, and we're constantly sitting at our own movie for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And you always are like, oh, what's that one person doing over there? Oh, what's that person doing over there? It's like, you got to remember, you are the control, and you got to keep saying that, I am in control of my own movie theater. Yes, I want to look at other people, but you got to run your own race, but you can also do it. And having those limiting beliefs, it can help take the shackles off by just doing daily habits to say that I can do this. I am confident. And again, what you said before, taking those little steps towards, achieving and pushing that boundary.
Here's a simple neurological hack for your listeners.
Great. I love hacks.
The next time you're going through something difficult, say the words, this is simple, this is easy, this is fun. This is simple, this is easy, this is fun. This is simple, this is easy, this is fun. And you start repeating this in your mind, and I promise you, you start to smile, because it's almost like so stupid, because you're like, I'm working out, and say you're trying to like really lose some weight, and you're at the gym, and like, I know I even do this in my mind when I'm working out real hard, and I'll say this to my mind. I'll say, this is simple, this is easy, this is fun. This is simple, this is easy, this is fun. And all of a sudden it starts to bring in new energy. It's like, okay, this is pretty easy, right? And that's a story. Right. You're telling yourself a different story. Right. It's that powerful, man. That's
awesome. That's incredible. And I actually want to get a little bit into that, because we can talk, again, I'm an engineer. We can talk all about the high, lofty 30,000 foot level of kumbaya, let's go, like, create different mindsets, and let's just do it. How do we do it? Like, how does one? What are the hacks? Like, that's one. Just this is easy. This is simple. What was the last one?
This is simple. This is easy. This is fun.
This is simple. This is easy. This is fun. What are other hacks that you like and you teach to your students that help them? And I'm talking a hack like that. A huge thing that helped me personally was starting to journal. Like, that was just something simple, so simple. Writing my goals down every single day. That changed. Again, it was a slight change, but it put me onto a trajectory of, out of this world. So what hacks can you can tell for my listeners?
Journaling is beautiful, man. And honestly, so the one thing that I've actually held on to, and I will for my entire life, and believe me, I've done a lot of different healing modalities, different hacks, whatever you want to call them, is meditation. meditation is the best gift that you can give yourself in this lifetime. And as a fat kid with a stutter who couldn't sit still with ADD, ADHD, and the doctors would have threw 10 bottles of scripts at me, that was placed in all the assisted learning classes in school. 5 years ago, when I sat down and meditated, I couldn't sit still, but I started out small. And I did 5 minutes, and I grew up to 10 minutes and then 15. And now I meditate 2 to 3 times a day for 20 to 30 minutes. And it's like a muscle. You do the same thing when you go to the gym. You're building stamina, right? So you work your spiritual muscle, your emotional muscle, your mental muscle when you're sitting there in a place of concentration. And meditation has been around for thousands of years. Meditation, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it. Some people think it's woohoo. I promise you, if you meditate and you do it on a consistent daily practice, it will begin to change your life. And the way that I teach my clients is it's a very simple practice. And basically, you're going to sit into a dark room. Do you want me to share with you how I meditate?
Yeah, 100%.
Basically, you sit in a dark room with your eyes closed, and you touch your pointer finger to your thumb on both hands lightly, and that creates a circuit of energy within your body. And basically, you bring your awareness starting out to your breath. So your eyes are closed, you're bringing your awareness into your breath, and you're breathing in through your nose and then out through your mouth. So in through your nose, out through your mouth, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And you can just sit there for 10 to 15 minutes to start out. And as the thoughts come into your mind, you're not trying to control your thoughts. You're just trying to release them as they come in. It's like I give the example of the ocean waves. They come in, they go back out. They come in, they go back out. And this is the point of stillness, right? And then you actually begin to communicate with that inner being within you, right? Because those 60,000 thoughts that we have a day, it's always chattering. That those voices are always chirping in your mind. And according to psychology, approximately 80% of our thoughts are negative, right? Yep. So we actually begin to hear ourselves thinking and say, holy shit, this is really negative, right? So that's what meditation will do for you. It will show you where you're not. And then obviously there's things like mantra or chanting, but I mean, I'm not going to do that on your show, but that's kind of the next level to it, where you actually develop a chant like a Om, O-M, and you begin to clear up your vibration, that's called. And, and then at the end of my meditation, I like to say my affirmation statements. So I'll say things like, I am abundant. I am loving. I am a powerful creator. I am a being of light. I am here to serve other people. I am prosperous. I am wealthy. I am healthy. Every single cell in my body is aligned. Everything going on in my life is exactly where I need to be. So I just sit there and say all these things, and I just get so much energy. And like, you come out of it and you're like, wow, I feel good. Like, dude, my dad, who's the most stubborn person I've ever met, which we now, by the way, have an amazing relationship because I forgave him. And that's a whole nother story. But he called me after I taught him how to meditate. He's like, dude, I don't know what you did, Jake, but something changed. He goes, my life is different. And like, I'm like, all right, just keep doing it and see how much better it gets.
What sort of meditation are you doing? Like you described, there's so many different forms of it. I started meditating to help me sleep better at night. Because again, it goes back to that chatter. I can't switch myself off. And so
that's a story though.
It is a story, and it's a combination. I can't switch myself off. There's a combination of writing stuff down, getting a pen and paper, getting the thoughts out of my head onto paper, helps clear my mind, which then can help me start relaxing for sleep time, which I then can follow up with meditation, which then helps me have a better night's sleep. I like everyone, we think we always have this story of, I'm too busy in the day to do it, but you have to find time for yourself. And the Miracle Morning talks about it. But making a habit out of something is so important. It's a trained thing. It doesn't just happen overnight. And so meditating and doing your affirmations that you talked about are definitely something that I encourage all the listeners to try and start doing. Journaling and meditation, two very simple things. Go out, and I challenge everyone listening to this show. I'm sure Jake's going to challenge you as well. Go out and learn it. Become a learned.
If they're ready. I never push
them. If they're ready, yeah. But you have to, as you said before, you have to be ready. If you're at the bottom of the barrel, or you want to change in your life and you're sick of the status quo, go and make a change. And again, you're the only one who can control that. Jake, I wanted to ask you something that came to my mind. When you're diving out of a plane and you're going at the first 30 seconds, free falling to earth, it's very extreme. When you do get into that coasting mode, how do you not fall back into the habits you did before?
Ooh, that is a good question, right? And complacency does kill. Okay. Yes. So yes, that's a great question. And that's why I have had people ask me before I told them my story. They're like, so do you ever like fall off track? And I'm like, no, because this is who I am. Right. And when you become it and you practice so much at it and you are just who is who you are, there is no going backwards. Right. Like I would never go back to being 70 pounds heavier than I am right now because I felt that pain. So I always look back and I reflect. I don't live in the past, and I don't encourage anybody to do that, but I reflect on the past and I remember why I am here where I am now. I remember why I lost all that weight because all the pain I felt. And I anchor that pain to being picked on and bullied again, right? I anchor that pain of having to go to a job and working with negative people for 10 hours a day that I don't want to be with. I anchor that pain of being in relationships, of being punched in the face by women in a relationship, right? That I appreciate women in my life so much more and I have such a respect for because I anchor pain, right? I look back at the past, and I believe it was Steve Jobs who said, you can't connect the dots looking forward, but you can only connect them looking backwards, right? So when we look back, we remember that we don't want to fall off. And when you build it who you are as a person, you will live in that state. And you really, and here's the thing, do I struggle at times? Hell yes. I mean, do you as well, Reed?
Sure. 100%. Like we all do. It's part of life. It's part of being an entrepreneur. It's right. So yeah, sorry, I cut you off. Keep going.
It's contrast, man. So that contrast in life, it's like if there was no up, there would be no down. If there was no hot, there would be no cold. And that contrast gets us closer to where we want to be in life. So I'm always finding things that makes me feel good. And if it doesn't make me feel good, if it doesn't feel like my spirit is in alignment with it and my energy is not in alignment, because we all have intuition, right? Everybody on this planet is given one, whether you know it or not, and whether you're too numb to feel it. We have an intuition. So listening to that inner guidance system, like you have like a GPS in your car to get from point A to point B. It's the same thing within your mechanism in your body, right? So I know you're an engineer and you're an analytical person. I could just tell just by listening to you talk, right? So going within and listening to that guidance, you're able to get to where you want to be. That doesn't mean you're not going to hit turbulence along the way.
Right.
And most of the turbulence you hit is in that initial startup phase. It's the first year of entrepreneurship is the hardest year. Well, that's a story, right? See how I caught that? It's difficult. It's
the first year is difficult. The first 5 years can be difficult. It can be, it's everyone's story or everyone's journey is different. But I hear what you're saying. And I guess it's going into that daily habit of making sure you're doing things for yourself and not like I was definitely in bad habits of waking up, phone straight on, Facebook checking, email checking. And I still sometimes fall into it. Trust me, I still do it. Like it's bad and I'm doing it. I'm trying to like stop after 9 o'clock at night, everything goes off. After 7 p.m. it goes on airplane mode so no one can email me, no one can call me. And like trying to do those little things and habits to break out of the thing that I'm doing. I know it's bad, but we all stumble, right? But again, I'm not stumbling to where I was because I've built up so much to get me to where I am today. And it's those lessons that you learn, as you said, connecting the dots along the way. You say, I know it's good for me to meditate. I know it's good for me to take time out of my day to breathe. I know it's good for me to go and work on myself. I know it's good for me to get really good sleep. So all those things we keep saying, and we know we have to do it. And that old age, I know I should do this, but I just don't. Again, another story, like you said, freaking stop making excuses and just do it. Like it's not hard. So I get so frustrated with people when they're like,
when they're ready,
this and that, when they're ready, but it take years. Sometimes people can take years. And it's like, I'm going to go live my own life while you get ready to.
What I've learned along my journey, because I started out pushing on people and it would frustrate me. What I learned is everyone is being exactly who they're supposed to be.
Right.
And we can't change people. The only thing and I always look back and I thought about how much it took to change me. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to have a conversation with somebody who's resistant that's going to try to change. No, I'm not going to force anything. It's just like the old adage says, the old statement, the old quote or whatever, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Right.
And, so when you're ready, it's all when the person's ready. But don't get tricked in this paradigm of thinking I'll never be ready, because then you'll always be paralyzed. And then you're just going to keep experiencing suffering.
Right. I completely agree. Mate, tell me, what do you got planned for the rest of 2018 and beyond? I know you've got a few exciting things happening with your podcast and book and stuff like that.
Everything happens in this present moment, Reed. Nothing is going on. I'm just kidding.
Sure, right. There's no goals, there's no aspirations.
Yeah, no. I don't think it's a bad
falling at 120 miles towards Earth, right? And
I don't think it's a bad thing to have goals and dreams, but presence, which brings me into this point, presence, being present in the moment, is one of the most powerful things that you can ever do in your life. Most people are so focused on the future, they're so focused on the past that they're never truly in this moment, and they miss out on so much life. They miss out on the moments with their kids. They miss out on the moments with their lover. They miss out on the moments at conversations with their friends because they're focused on the future. They're focused on the past. But, for me in 2018, man, I'm just going to keep spreading my message of, hope, love, courage, and to other people through whatever outlet that is, man, and sharing my wisdom, my experiences that I've gained, and also continuing to learn, continuing to grow as a person, continue to be more present, working on, my patience, and working on, just meditating deeper, going deeper within my own self. I mean, continuing to obviously live a healthy lifestyle, exercising, eating, nutritious foods, and, serving people, man, helping other people. I'm telling you, a mentor sent me this quote a few years back that I had, and he said this quote to me, always rung in my mind. And it was a quote by Zig Ziglar. And he said, you can have everything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want.
Right.
And, you do that by first helping yourself, because you can't help anybody if you can't do shit for yourself. But you start with yourself. And then once you find it, right? Like Pablo Picasso says, he says, the meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. Right. So we discover these things about ourselves, and then we say, okay, now I want to share. Right. So we go out in the world and we wanted to share this wisdom, like what you're doing right now with your podcast. You're so inspired. You're an entrepreneur. You're doing all this great stuff in the world because you were inspired.
Right.
That was the shift, right?
Right. Exactly. I was inspired by someone else, and that this show is now a way in which I get my juju, I get my juice, I get my things. I love talking. Like after I'm always on cloud nine after I get off the podcast, because I've interviewed, cream of the crop or whatever yourself, and just I'm so energetic. I'm like, let's go work out, let's go do something, let's go for a run, So
plus you got a really cool accent. I'm sure people love listening to you.
Yeah, exactly. The Australian accent doesn't hurt, but sorry, but back to you. Yeah. I think it's incredible, but you also do have a podcast coming out, right?
Right. Well, no, it's out right now.
Oh, it's out right now. Sorry. What's it called?
The Awake with Jake Show, How to Awaken Your Inner Badass.
Nice.
And so I have, there's like a bunch of episodes that I already launched. I did some really great interviews with other entrepreneurs. It's really like a entrepreneurial self-realization, personal development, spiritual development podcast. And it really encompasses all of those things that I've learned and kind of anchors it down to give you kind of a blueprint for what you want in life to really begin chipping away at what it is. And that's why I started this podcast, man. It was just to continue, like I said, one more outlet to serve people, right? And that's all we can do.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Well, dude, we've come to the end of the show. I want you to give me your top 5 investing tips. You ready to dive into it?
Hell yeah.
Let's do it, man. What is the daily habit that you practice to keep on track towards your goals? You might have already answered this. We maybe spend the whole show talking about it, but I want you to tell it again to the listeners.
Daily habit to keep on track for what?
Towards your goals.
Towards my goals?
Yep.
Be more present in the moment.
Be more present in the moment. That's awesome. That's awesome. How do you do that? How do you be more present without just saying that to someone? What's a hack that someone can say, I want to be like Jake and I want to be more present right now? How do they do that?
Right. Put your phone away. Honestly, man, so like be gentle with yourself at first. When you catch yourself thinking in the future, you're thinking in the past, gently bring yourself back into the moment and just be here now. Mm-hmm. And it's where everything happens. You can have all these great goals and aspirations, but if you're a I'll be happy when person, you're never going to be happy, because the goal in life is not an end destination. You don't just arrive at happiness. Okay. Happiness is here now. Right. And if you don't decide to be happy in this moment, you're never going to be happy.
I love it. I love it. Happiness is here now. I'm writing this down. Happiness is here now. That's a really good one. Mate, who's the most influential person in your career to date?
My inner being.
Your inner being. What's his name?
Jake. No, I'm just kidding. Honestly, man. So yeah, I've really learned to tune in to myself, and I know a lot of, there's a lot of great material out there, a lot of information. And don't get me wrong, I love great books and there's amazing people. And there's been so many great teachers and spiritual guides in my life and mentors and everything. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're going to do what you need to do because you want to do it. Okay. So your best influence is your own self, right? And going within to your own self. And this is probably not an answer you've ever gotten before, but maybe you have. I can't assume. So going within your own self and truly getting real with yourself is going to bring you a lot of clarity in life and a lot of guidance. And it just really depends on where the person's at in their life. But, let me think. A really great teacher is Abraham Hicks. I love Abraham Hicks. I don't know are you familiar with her?
I've heard of.
Check her out, man. Awesome. Great teacher.
Okay.
Got some great YouTube videos. I went to one of her workshops. I mean, like I said, it depends on where the person is in their life, but if they check out Abraham Hicks, they'll be impressed.
Awesome. Okay.
And also check in with your own inner being.
Check in with your own. Love it. I love that. I'm checking with your own being. And happiness is now. I think that's a huge one. Like you can choose to be happy right now. There's no some sort of station you're trying to go to. So yeah, what is the most influential tool in your business? And it could be both software or hardware. Social media. You think so? I mean, so put your phone down, but also just tweet that one thing.
Well, it's like work. It's like work, man. So like you have like the working time. When you're present, you're present. When you're on social media and you're using it for a tool and you're not just scrolling, it can be a very powerful tool. You can like, look at this. Me and you are still connected 3 months later after this event. Business cards aren't a thing anymore. Connect with people on social media. I promise you, like it will change you. But use social media as a tool, not a way to go look at hot chicks or check out what other people are doing. I hate to call people out, but you see what I'm saying here, right?
Yep.
Social media is a beautiful thing if you use it as a beautiful thing, not to abuse it. So I would honestly, I don't think there's anything more powerful as a tool other than social media to use it properly. But I mean, you're looking for something like probably like, give me more. I'll be more specific if you want.
No. That's your tool. That's fantastic. I've had people on the show that said that their tools, the best tool in their business is their phone because they can call people. Right. I've had some people talk about that the best tool in their business is their personal analyst that they have. There's different things for different.
I think another tool too, Reed, is my energy. Listening to my intuition. That's probably not one you hear too often. It's truly listening to your spirit.
And how to harness that energy for better good, right? Because your story is that you were an overweight kid that was too energetic and someone was wanting to just drug the shit out of you so you didn't have to be a pain in the ass, right? And so harnessing that energy to be for good is what you have to, we all have to harness that inner energy, right? And making sure that is propelling us forward towards our goals or aspirations or getting started in investing or starting that business or quitting your day job, whatever it might be. It's that energy focused in the right way. And that's through meditation, right? So it's
I was definitely a pain in the ass, by the way.
No, really?
Dude, I had so much. I mean, I still have so much vibrational energy, but back then it was just like all over the place.
What's been your biggest failure to date, and what did you learn from that failure?
Ooh, well, I've had a lot of them, but yeah, I look at failure probably a little differently than most people do because failing is completely giving up on something, right? And completely just walking away from it and saying, I quit on this. And I've always looked at failure as kind of a way to learn, as a tool that we can use to say, okay, let me just recalculate this, as your engineering mind would do. Mm-hmm. And you go in and you kind of dig up the pieces and you look at it and you start to look at yourself in the mirror a little deeper. So failure, is one of those things. But I'm trying to think specifically in my mind, something that I failed at that really just, there's been so many times in my life where I feel like I failed, most of my life early on. And then I actually started succeeding in things and being successful. Man, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of
failing fast. I guess that's one because learning to fail is a hard thing, right? In itself.
I think the failure that I had was at first failing to help myself more than I was trying to help other people, and because I just love people, man, and I think that I was failing because I was working more trying to help other people that were resistant to change. And I wasn't working on myself. And I've learned that the more you work on yourself, you work on more other people around you. And for example, John F. Kennedy says, he said, rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
So yeah, man, I mean, I failed to realize that I was pushing myself on people with my philosophies and my theories and my wisdom, people that weren't ready.
Right.
And I failed miserably at that a lot. And I got a lot of resistance from a lot of people. So I've learned to really hone that down and just allow the right people to show up in my life. Because if we're focused on the wrong people, we can't allow the right people into our life.
100%. No, I think that's an incredible way to look at it, that you have to be, again, it goes back to your vulnerability thing. I think what you said at the beginning of the show, that just like being vulnerable with people brings down barriers, and that allows you to connect on a deeper level in order to create relationships, friendships, whatever, to grow forward as better human beings or better business people, or better, relationships with employees or invest, whatever it might be. It's that becoming personable. So awesome stuff, mate. Last question is, where can people reach you to continue the conversation? They want to find a lot more about your book, about your podcast. Where can they go?
I'm on Facebook heavily. I do a lot of live videos, a lot of content on Facebook, as well as Instagram as well. I mean, those are pretty much my two most active social media. And then, like I said, I have the podcast as well. And you can go and check that out on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. I mean, it's all over the place. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me, shoot me a message. I do my best to reply to people. If you're needing guidance or whatever you're looking for, you reach out to me.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to thank you so much for dropping in. I just want to quickly summarize some of the things that I took away from today's show. And I think the biggest one is at the end there, talking about happiness is now. You're not waiting for something to happen in the future. But also another big one is being vulnerable with people is okay. And a lot of us have been trained or put in that corner, that stigma of like, don't be vulnerable with people. Don't let your guard down. You got to be tough. You got to be this. You got to be that. And it goes into the what we've been talking about the entire show is like, breaking the shackles of what we've been told as children to go off. We've got to be successful at this. We've got to have this job. We've got to have this 401k. And we can't harness that inner child to then go and be free to go and pursue a career as an entrepreneur, or pursue a career in investing, or take that next leap of faith into a relationship with someone that you may be hesitant to do, but also having a really positive relationship with yourself. And it all comes around that way in which you're being vulnerable with people and being vulnerable with yourself and understanding what makes yourself tick in order to take that next step in your life. I also think some of the hacks that you said today were incredible. The meditation hacks, and what was the one? It was, this is simple. This is great. This is easy. Or what was it again?
This is simple. This is easy. This is fun.
This is simple. This is easy. This is fun. I think that is incredible, and something that I encourage every single person listening to the show today to go and start saying every day. And I encourage you to start journaling. And when I mean by journaling, get the thoughts out of your head, because one thing that Jake did say was that we start to get cluttered, and if we're in our head, we're dead. So getting it out of your head on piece of paper and becoming more mindful and being present. Jake, did I leave anything out, mate?
Nah, man, that was it. I would just say, learn to love and accept yourself for who you are.
That's awesome. Well, man, on that note, I want to thank you so much for dropping by. Enjoy your rest of your week, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you, my brother.
Well, there you have it. Another incredible episode jam-packed with some incredible advice and actionable tips and some absolute life hacks. Make sure you do check out all the show notes from today's show up on my website at reedgoosens.com. And make sure that you click on the podcast tab, because that's where all the things and links will be to Jake's website and to his podcast and to his Facebook page. Now, make sure I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to tune in to continue to grow your financial IQ, because that's what we're all about here on this show. And if you do like this show, please give us a review on iTunes. Remember, we were going to do this all again next week. So take care, be safe, and remember, happy investing.